Probably would.
What do you think about that? I'm gonna have to read some of it. That's a good point.
You get chopped.
This is what you're allowed to do in the military.
Oh.
'Cause you can't point.
Good evening. I'm calling to order the regular city council meeting for the city of Sierra Vista for 10 September 2020. Before we get started on the call to order, I'll mention that we're having some technical problems with our video captioning that we normally run because there's a faulty cable and we weren't able to get that repaired by tonight's meeting. But we're going to soldier on anyway, so we apologize for not being able to provide that service for the people that need it. We'll hopefully have it online, ready to go next time. So I'll call the meeting to order at 5 o'clock. And Mrs. Adams, may we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Rick Mueller,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Rachel Gray,
Present.
Councilmember William Benning,
Present.
Councilmember Gwen Calhoun,
Present.
Councilmember Sarah Pacheco, Councilmember Carolyn Humphrey,
Present.
Councilmember Christine Wolf.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mrs. Adams. Tonight, we'll start as usual with the invocation and the pledge. Tonight, the invocation will be led by Pastor Jerry Priest of the Hope and Healing Christian Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Benning. Please rise.
Let us pray. Father, we know that the powers that be are ordained of God. Therefore, we take this opportunity to pray for our faithful police, fire, and EMT personnel, the blessing and protection provided by Psalm 91. We claim that they abide under the shadow of the Almighty. You are their refuge and fortress, and you they will trust. You deliver them from hidden traps and shield them from deadly hazards. Your huge outstretched arms protect them, and they are perfectly safe. They fear nothing, not prowlers at night, nor disasters at day, nor no harm will ever graze them. They stand untouched, because you, Father, are their refuge. Evil can't get close to them, and harm can't get through the door. Father, you have ordered angels to guard them wherever they go. And Father, I thank you for the vision I had last week of giant angels standing behind our police officers with swords drawn. We thank you, Father, for this unspeakable gift. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. And thank you, Pastor Priest, and thank you, Mr. Benning. Next item is item number 1, acceptance of the agenda. Mrs. Calhoun.
Mr. Mayor, I move the agenda for the regular city council meeting of September 10th, 2020 be approved as written.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any additions, comments, corrections? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Please let the record show that Mrs. Patuchek is Patuchek. Sorry, Sarah. Mrs. Pacheco is now here with us. I apologize for that again. Let's see. The next item is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Victoria.
So I'm pleased to report that as of today, there were 42 active COVID cases in the county, with 6 to 10 in the 85635 zip code, 1 to 5 in the 85650 zip code, and the same on Fort Huachuca. So with numbers having trended down over the past few weeks, city buildings reopened lobbies this past Tuesday, as well as the Cove for lap swim by reservation, The library computer lab, cafe, and the museum have all also opened with some additional precautions. And the EBC and the Pottery Studio will be reevaluated in a few weeks for reopening as well. So the city currently has one RFP posted for a WIP portal, which is a stakeholder engagement portal for the Upper San Pedro Partnership. That RFP is due back on September 22nd. A number of projects have been awarded recently, including the Fort Huachuca Joint Resource Utilization Study, which is grant funded by the Office of Economic Adjustment, and that was awarded to Matrix Design Group. That study will kick off this month and is expected to wrap up in November of 2021.
And the purpose of the study?
The Joint Resource Utilization Study, Mayor?
Yeah.
It will examine, thank you for stumping me tonight, Mayor.
Okay.
We will have more information on that in the executive report coming up in 2
Good answer.
weeks.
Okay.
The Sierra Vista Metropolitan Planning Organization Short Range Transit Plan was awarded to Michael Baker International. The NEPA Environmental Clearance Study for the EMS Fire Substation construction, which is a requirement by the Office of Economic Adjustment for construction of that station, which we are hoping to hear of that award next week, was awarded to Harris Environmental. That should be completed in December or January. And then professional design and engineering work was awarded to McGann and Associates for improved irrigation system at Veterans Park and the Rothery site. The City Hall remodeling project is currently underway, and that's scheduled to be completed by October 31st. The next meeting of council will be your work session on September 22nd at 3 p.m. here in council chambers, followed by the council meeting on Thursday, September 24th at 5 p.m. also here in council chambers. And then finally, I would just like to share that our Spotlight Breakfast video will premiere 1 week from today, next Thursday, September 17th at 6:30 a.m. That's going to premiere on the City of Sierra Vista's Facebook page and will also be hosted on our website starting that morning. We plan to notify the community by email to our VIP list on Monday, and we'll put advertisements out as well. And then following the premiere, that video will remain available on Facebook and on our website. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs. Yarborough. Any questions for Mrs. Yarborough on the city manager's report?
No.
Okay. We'll next move on to the consent agenda. Ms. Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the consent agenda consisting of the City Council regular meeting minutes of August 13th, 2020, the City Council special meeting minutes of September 1st, 2020, and Resolution 2020-053, acceptance of public improvements partial release for lots 97 through 121 and 179 through 187 of the Summit Heights subdivision be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments or discussion? Questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to new business. Item number 3, Ms. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Resolution 2020-054, approving a development agreement with CDS2 LP for Phase 2 of Casa del Sol Apartments be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Pregler, may we have the staff report, please?
Yes, you can, of course. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This request for a development agreement pertains to property located at 1020 South Carmichael Avenue. Let me get this going here. Okay. 1020 South Carmichael Avenue, occupied in part by Phase 1 of the Casa del Sol Apartments, as you could tell from the overhead photo. Casa del Sol Apartments is a low-income tax credit senior living community. The triangular-shaped site is adjacent to Timothy Lane Park and the Meadows subdivision to the east. We have Buffalo Soldier Trail to the west, Sierra Carmichael Apartments to the north, and Golf Links Road to the south. And I also created this map based on a conversation we had at the work session. And this clearly shows that there's a 16-foot drainage way separating the applicant's property with the Meadow subdivision to the east. So in addition to that, in addition to the 16-foot drainage way, there was roughly, and if looking at building F, for example, which would be the closest probably building to the residences to the Meadows, that was roughly 50 feet to that property line. And then you have additional 16 feet with the drainage way in place. So overall, there was about 66 feet from building F to the property line of those residences in the Meadows. And of course, they have their own setbacks as well. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. That was mentioned at the last meeting. Now, the first phase was completed in 2012, again, also by a development agreement, and does consist of 3 4-story buildings containing 88 apartment units on the north 3 acres of the site. And you can see phase 1 is located right here, phase 2, phase 3. The second phase, which has received a tax credit approval and will be under construction within the year, proposes 3 similar buildings containing 80 apartments surrounding a pool, a clubhouse, and amenity area on 2.35 acres. And again, just to indicate, there's the detention basin right here, and there's a pool located in this area as well. And the third and final phase will include 2 4-story buildings containing 72 apartments on 2.77 acres. Required stormwater detention basins will be constructed as part of each phase. Again, this agreement will be applicable to phase 2 and phase 3 of development only. The subject property is located within the West End Infill Incentive District. The policy is used to encourage infill development on vacant or underutilized sites in the redevelopment of dilapidated buildings or structures. Arizona revised statutes and the Infill Incentive District policy do authorize City Council to approve relief from development standards and waivers of municipal fees for development activities to incentivize infill development. Of course, this is done pursuant to an approved development agreement recommended by the city manager, hence the request today. So there are 6 conditions in the agreement I wanted to go over. The first has to do with the reduction of off-street parking. The minimum off-street parking requirements for apartment spaces provided in the development code do not account for the reduced parking demand associated with senior living. In fact, according to the applicant, it is their experience that virtually all communities developed through low-income housing tax credit programs has a parking ratio of 1 space per 1 unit, and that less than 1 parking space is needed per apartment for senior communities developed through this program. Now, staff is not aware of any parking problems associated with the first phase since its completion 5 years ago, and finds that the proposed number of spaces to be adequate for a senior living community. Staff did go drive to the site this morning to verify, to ensure there's adequate parking on the site. We verified that about 70% of the parking was at capacity, so obviously 30% was not being used. I also do want to mention that the property is adjacent to a transit stop, and so many of the residences can certainly use public transportation to transport from one place to the other. So the second condition has to do with building height. And these are building elevations from phase 1. Phase 2 is going to look a little bit different, but this is generally how the elevations are going to look. So the second condition of the agreement provides a 9-foot increase to the maximum building height of 40 feet to enhance their architectural design and appearance. The proposed building height would match the height of the buildings constructed in phase 1, 41 feet to the top of the parapet and 49 feet to the top of a pyramid-shaped roof. So basically, that additional 9 feet will be used primarily for architectural embellishment, so there will not be any residents living within this 9-foot area. And as also, you could see, only certain sections of the building will be at this 49-foot level. Again, where you have the pyramid roofs, the parapet roofs, but where you have the flat roofs, it would not exceed the 49-foot height requirement, or would not meet that 49-foot requirement. It'll still be within probably 41 feet. The next would be the building separation. The third condition relates to a 10-foot reduction of the minimum building separation requirement of 30 feet. It'll go from 30 feet to 20 feet. The decrease in building separation is necessary to accommodate required landscape buffers, stormwater detention basins, and amenity areas. The buildings will be constructed in an approved manner using fire-rated materials to comply with the city's building and fire safety codes. Okay, next would be the driveway access. So this fourth condition would allow the developer to construct a portion of Carmichael right-of-way to private roadway construction standards. The exhibit does depict the applicable segment of road right-of-way that dead ends approximately 300 feet south of Timothy Lane. Now, the developer desires to narrow the pavement width to slow traffic entering the complex. South Carmichael is designated as a local residential street, which would typically require a minimum constructed street width of 34 feet. The minimum constructed street width for private streets is 26 feet. Public Works has agreed to the reduction of this portion of roadway, provided the developer is responsible for all maintenance, which would be memorialized by by a separate agreement, right-of-way agreement. The density, the fifth condition of the agreement would reduce the minimum lot area per unit from 1,740 square feet to 1,279 square feet for Phase 2, 1,676 square feet for Phase 3, as shown in the table. And then I believe this is the last condition here. The last condition has to do with the deferral of sewer connection fees. Again, this was also a condition in the Phase 1 development agreement as well. But this would allow for the required sewer connection fee to be paid out over a period of 10 years, commencing with the issuance of the first building permit of each phase. And finally, I do want to mention compliance with city policy. I mentioned earlier about the infill incentive district policy. It does allow for development code waivers as an incentive to encourage investment in the West End. This is also compliant with General Plan Goal 12-1, which promotes quality, affordable housing, and General Plan Goal 12-8, which also promotes the increasing housing choices that serve all age groups and needs. This does conclude staff support. Mr. Mayor, I do want to mention that the applicant is here in the audience today, Mr. Glenn Walling, if you have any questions regarding the project.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for being here today. We appreciate that. I have a procedural question before I open it up for discussion. The Mayor Pro Tem pointed out to me that when you go back to the resolution itself, it talks about approving phases 2 and 3, but the motion that was read only said Phase 2. So are we doing only Phase 2, or are we doing 2 and 3?
It should be Phase 2 and Phase 3.
Okay. So with that being said, I would ask for an amendment to the motion to include Phase 3.
So do I move or second?
No, I'm asking for a motion, so you got to make a motion.
I make a motion that we amend item 3 to include Phase 3 of the amendment.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, now we're technically correct, so we could go on. Question for Mr. Pregler.
Couple of comments.
Ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I keep reaching for the mic. I just wanted to clarify that in that last statement on compliance, General Plan Goal 12-8, this project actually is not increasing housing choices for all age groups. This housing is only for 55 and older.
That is.
Is it? Okay.
Or a spouse that's married to somebody that's 55 or older.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or, if they're taking care of a grandkid, that's also included, as long as the tenant is 55 or older, is my understanding.
Oh, okay. I
That
see.
shouldn't be a lot of people, but generally you're right.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Calhoun, that actually leads me to the question that was raised at the work session regarding if this project will serve people with disabilities. I did talk to the developer about this. The project is actually specifically geared towards low-income elderly residents. However, because of the Fair Housing Act, they certainly cannot discriminate against anybody that has disabilities. So if somebody wanted to apply with disabilities who was younger than 55 years old, they can certainly apply and be housed at this community.
That's
Okay.
good to know.
I did talk to the developer this afternoon. He did indicate that in Phase 1, nobody under 55 years of age actually lives in Phase 1.
Oh, okay. I had an additional, let's see. Oh, this was a question. The total that you gave us for the sewer fees, was that for all three phases?
That would apply to both Phase 2 and Phase 3.
Only 2 and 3, because,
That's right. Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Calhoun, Phase 1 has been paid off already.
okay. Thank you. That was it.
Yes, sir.
A follow-up, so for the fee deferral, that's Phase 2 and 3 added together or separate?
Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Benning, it's separate.
Okay, so it's twice that then, one for Phase 2 and one for Phase 3?
That's correct.
Thank you. And then I just wanted, I had the same concern Councilwoman Gwen had on Tuesday about the view. So I went out Tuesday and was in Timothy Lane. You have a view. You can see mountains over Phase 1. When you walk the path, the walls are, the homeowner's wall is about 6 feet. I didn't go up to them. I didn't want people to call police and have chief come get me because I was
Looking over
minding my
fences.
own business. You can't see nothing from sitting down in them. So it won't hinder, you won't see out that wall from sitting down, so it shouldn't hinder either way. Now, if they walked up to the wall, they have a view. It's more mountainous, tips are mountainous, but they do have a view. So it was give or take.
I also noticed in the pictures today, I didn't notice it Tuesday, but that driveway or the parking area separates the building also
Yeah,
from being
helps.
right at the fence, and that makes
Separation.
perfect sense.
That is
yeah.
correct.
Thank you. Thanks.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna forget what it was, but I'll start with my first question was that triangle on the end, are they landscaping or what's happening there on the end?
It's the drainage, detention basin.
Is that drainage or?
Detention basin.
Detention
It
basin.
is a detention basin, okay. I had something else and I forgot. Oh, bringing that this is Phase 2 and Phase 3, is it kind of going all, I thought when we were talking about it earlier that it was just Phase 2. And so I didn't realize it was both, but, is it the construction timeline just kind of rolling into it, or what is that gonna look like?
Question is really is the phasing.
Is
We
it
approve 'em- We
phasing?
approve them now, and are they gonna be phased over a period of years, or are they gonna start working the whole shebang?
Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Pacheco, the applicant could probably explain that better than I could, but from what I'm understanding, they have tax credits right now for Phase 2. They're working on the site plan submittal, so, construction will start as soon as that site plan is approved. There might be a couple of year gap between Phase 2 and Phase 3. I know there's some other projects that the applicant would like to work on. So I don't know what the timing would be for Phase 3. I don't know if
Has he got that
any
basically
insights
correct?
on that. If you
Please, yeah, you need to get on the mic, sorry. And if you just identify yourself so we have it on the record.
Hey, I'm Glenn Walling, main principal for this development. I did notice that I think the faces have changed here since I was here last. I've always had a good time here.
Probably only one,
Yeah.
it's the same.
Yeah,
I think I was here
it has
last
been a
time,
few
yeah.
years since we did the early one, and the Santa Fe Springs deal over at the old Hummingbird Trailer Park back. Those were the good old days. For some wild times over there. But anyway, the question here was, you see, I start talking, I got off the answer. You were asking some specific, I have one thing to say. I heard some of the discussion on ages. Sometimes it's easy when you're not in the middle of the project to use words that are all true, but you need to hear them all together to really get the whole picture, because sometimes they get stated separately. It's true that in Phase 1, there's no, Mayor Mueller, you mentioned something about one person in the household. With the way the Department of Housing issues these tax credits for certain age groups, it is only one person in each household that has to meet that. And yes, you can have grandkids or children or younger spouses or caretakers of any other age as long as the main applicant is over the age. And it's also true that any disabled person applying to rent has to be treated just like they're over 55, no matter what their age is. And it does happen that in Phase 1, there are a lot of people living there actually, not to disagree with what he said, because he was talking about the primary person in each household. I had shared that with him, that all the primary renters in Phase 1 they're all 55 and over that are in phase one. But there are people living there in phase one, less than 55, because they're the secondary people in some of the households. Those are some things I've heard, but right now, you asked me to come up here to address,
The potential phasing of the project.
okay, the phasing.
Time.
Boy, it would take all night to explain in minute detail, so real briefly, it goes like this. You can only win so many tax credits at a time, and they go with X amount of cost. So many tax credits cover X amount of cost, and that's why we have phase 2 and 3. If we could have won the whole thing, there's a demand for this right now. For example, phase 1 is 100% occupied, and there's 100 people on a waiting list.
Oh my gosh.
So, and that's people that didn't know we had more phases coming. They're just on that waiting list for those 3 buildings. So we would have loved to do all this at once and bring all that activity to the community, all that new beautiful housing. We'd love to do it all at the same time, but you can only win so many tax credits at a time. And usually the way ADO works on those allocations is they don't want to issue any more for the same kind of project of development, housing development, until one in the same town they've already issued is completely leased up and performing. Therefore, probably the earliest we can win any more tax credits to do phase 3 would be in 2022. Because in 2021, and it might be 2023, it depends on how fast this gets up and fully leased up. And then you have to match that with the application dates for the tax credits at Department of Housing, but it'll probably be, see, in 2021, there's no way, because if we applied for those in 2021, they're gonna say, hey, you still haven't finished phase 2 and leased them up yet. We're not gonna give you more of our precious allocation of credits, and these credits that you may know are very competitive. They have like 40-some applicants and, I don't know, 15 or so winners every year.
Okay, so that tells us it's gonna be a few years before the phase 3. I think that answers your question. Gwen, did you have a question?
I did, or do. Is it possible you might not get the credits for the 3rd phase because of the competitiveness?
Yes.
That's not a question.
Yes,
for
I
you.
don't know how to talk around that, yes, because you have to go win them, but unless they drastically change the way they're scoring right now, because it's a scored thing, unless they drastically change it, if they leave it substantially the same as this year, we'll win again, because we won handily this year.
And by having it already pre-approved, I'm sure that helps the
That's
application.
what I was gonna.
Yes, it does, yes.
That's what I wondered. Okay, that's good.
Well, yeah,
Thank you.
Until you win it for phase 3, you're not gonna do any horizontal development you ain't gonna touch phase 3 until you win those ADOs.
We will have a circulation drive of some sort that will just be a paved driving surface around through phase 3, because
Okay.
we have to have complete circulation.
Okay.
And that's like they have right now,
They have it now.
south of phase 1, there's a way to drive around there,
Okay.
even though it's not paved.
Okay.
Right, yes, exactly.
Thanks, sir.
Well, we're really happy to see this coming in.
Oh, thank you very
Really
much.
happy.
yeah.
So needed.
Yes.
Thank you.
So needed.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here tonight. Any other questions on this issue? Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to item number 4. Ms. Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Resolution 2020-055, adoption of the land use assumptions and infrastructure improvement plan be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Felix,
Mayor,
enlighten us, please.
Yes, Mayor and members of council, this is an ongoing saga. There are 4 steps to updating the development fees. You are in step 2 of the 4 steps, and tonight you are adopting, if you agree to, the infrastructure improvement plan and the land use assumptions. We'll go over the total timeline at the end. You've already had a public hearing on them, and then we will is to reminder the methodologies that are being used in the infrastructure improvement plan are for 3 of the funds, a buy-in phase. When the original development was done and the original construction was done, the original fees were done, a certain growth rate was expected. The growth rate did not occur as originally planned, so there's excess capacity. So for the police, fire, and park development fees, you have a buy-in to the current facilities. For the roadways, the infrastructure, we are doing expected growth approach. There is no buy-in needed for these funds, and it is a half-lane mile of road. It is a generic half-lane mile of road, so depending on where development goes in the community, we could either take it, for example, extending BST eastwards, or taking the current road by Chaparral Village and taking that further south, kind of parallel to intersecting with what maybe Avenida Cochise or something else further down the road. For the infrastructure improvement plan, the buy-in, I mean, to make this clear, because there was an original draft and revised draft for the infrastructure improvement plan. The revised draft, we're doing a buy-in for the Fire Station 3 and the Tower 3 that was included in the construction, the original plan. For the parks, most of this is Sears Center Park, the park equipment, the original soccer fields, which have been since turfed, the parking lot, all the public improvements in that park. The police station is the expansion, excluding, of course, the training center over there, because we did not have one. We cannot keep that in with the usage. And then streets, as I said, 1 half-lane mile and 1 intersection. At any point in town, it would qualify for the usage. Under law, we have 10 years to spend the money we're starting to collect for this roadway. So here's a summary of it. The 3 funds, the police, fire, and park development fee funds, are running a deficit, which is also why we're buying in. Key point is these bonds have been paid off on the park development, on the infrastructure portions. We are just simply having to repay the capital improvements fund for the loans to make the payment on the debt. We are not short and don't owe any money, have not missed any bond payments, so no worries there. The other key point here is here's the best guesstimate that the consultant has based off input from community development and other statistical things in the area of the growth in all the single-family, multifamily, and other housing units, industrial square footage, commercial square footage, office square footage, and then, of course, the employment that would drive the increases in those areas and housing. It's all kind of linked. They use national standards with input on what seems to be happening locally, on what we've seen historically and what the community development has seen kind of coming in. Although you're not voting on the fees based off the infrastructure improvement plan, here is kind of what the fees may look like. The original fees we adopted when we first implemented them back in 2006 were $5,300. Based off the growth in a construction cost index, that would be equivalent to $7,200 right now. The current fees at 100% are $4,095, and the proposed fees for a single-family home would be $5,373. A key point is due to changes in the state law and other environmental changes, we are coinciding this with a recommended decrease to the construction sales tax. When the fees were implemented, a 7/10 excess construction sales tax was implemented to offset part of the police, fire, and infrastructure fees. They were levied at 75% instead of 100. With the law changes, we are recommending to reduce the construction sales tax to the same 1.95% that is the normal retail sales tax, and implement the fees at 100%. This makes transferring things easier, easier budgeting, and easier reporting requirements. I'll go over this, so let me go here real quick. There is a request for a comparison of the commercial ones. The handout's been given to you. I'll jump to the last page if it will come up. As it comes up slowly, this is a summary of the fee comparison for all of them in the proposed. You will see that over time there have been some changes. The original development fee had commercial property based on square footage. There were 3 sections. That has been in the last report moved down to commercial, all has the same rate. Office has the same rate. Hotel, there have been added nursing homes that were not on the prior studies, but you'll see the comparison there. It is available too. You guys have been uploaded to the website. So.
Well, it's still loading, David. So what you're telling me, on the last slide, the one says fee comparison, that's the one you're talking
Yes.
about? Okay. So non-residential per square foot, if we have a commercial building /shopping center that's less than 100,000 in, currently they would pay 5.41 per square foot And if this is approved, they'll go down to 4.48.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm reading that right. The single-family detached numbers on the top of the page.
Yes.
Again, current 4.095. And that's a house of what size? Just
That's a single-family standalone residence, detached house.
And so then the proposed would be 5373, not the 700 and something, 7,000 something that was reported in the
Correct.
paper.
Correct.
Okay.
That's due to changes in the current infrastructure improvement plan. Now, these fees we'll go to the next step. If you have no more questions on this, I'll go to the next step. On June 11th, you declared a public hearing. We've received no comments on anything to do with the infrastructure improvement plan, any part of the report. The land use, the plan, or even the fees. Tonight, you are only voting on the infrastructure improvement plan and the land use assumptions. On October 22nd, you will have and approve a public hearing on the proposed fees, and they will be open for public comment. And on the 10th of December, you would vote on those proposed fees. If you do approve the fees at 100%, you would then vote on changing the tax rate, reducing it from the 2.45 to the 1.95, and the new fees and the new tax rate would go into effect on March 1st.
So what you're telling us, we're voting tonight on methodology.
Correct.
Basically.
You're voting on the
We're not
assumptions,
voting on,
not on the rates.
on the rates. Okay, everybody got that?
Mm-hmm.
David, do you have anything else?
That's it.
Questions,
Unless you have any
questions for
questions.
Mr. Felix?
And we'll look at all this again in 5 years. Right?
3 to
Yeah,
5
no,
3 to
it's-
5 years.
3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years.
And
Just, you know.
what the important thing there is
Speculative.
there's a lot of economic factors, growth rate, all kinds of things that could cause us to do it early or could cause us to do it later. So the legislature's given us a window.
Okay. That's all.
Okay? But no further questions? Or discussion, I should say. I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Felix. Item number 5, Mrs. Pacheco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that resolution 2020-056 approving an intergovernmental agreement with Cochise County for fiscal year 2021 consolidated court services be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. And it's Mrs. Yarborough. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So although council recently approved a new court agreement in July, the Board of Supervisors disagreed with some of the changes made and proposed the agreement before you tonight, which is the same agreement approved previously, but without the reporting requirements and for 6 months instead of 1 year. One change made since Tuesday was the adjustment of Section 4, Duties of the City, Part D, to reflect the 6-month cost of $80,500 instead of the full year cost of $161,000. It's my intent to bring an updated agreement with a new funding formula back to you before the end of this agreement, and I'm happy to report that discussions are going well on that end. And if council approves this agreement tonight, it will go to the Board of Supervisors at their September 29th meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, before we go there, we have a member of the public that wants to address us on this item. Mr. DiCarlo, you know the routine, so I won't talk about the 5 minutes and the lights and all that other stuff. So please share your wisdom with us.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, citizens of Sierra Vista, staff. Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that. I was actually planning on explaining why I keep coming here all the time. I was born in northeastern Ohio, which was once part of the Connecticut Western Reserve. If you've ever heard anything about a New England town hall meeting, there's a reason that we have these things. In that, I would like to thank the pastor for his prayer, because even though this is going to sound bad, we are behind you. Okay, we're behind you, with our swords drawn. Remember that, all right? But there's nothing but love when I'm saying that. Okay. Back in April, in my neighborhood, there was a disturbance or whatever. But as all of us have adjusted to being under this these conditions that we've been forced to live under by a a governor who I actually wanted to stop by Burger King, and since you're good friends, you can give him that and ask him if he had a crown on his head, would he be doing this stuff? But in my neighborhood, there was a disturbance. I had been up all night. I had actually had campfires at night, just trying to figure this stuff out, just trying to relax, because being put in a cage after you've had all the keys is kind of disturbing. My neighbor had, I guess he discharged his firearm in his house, whatever. I was sleeping on my couch. It didn't even bother me. I'm a dozen and change houses from him. That's not my concern. He did that, then you have to answer for that. But my concern is that, and I wasn't there, this is all secondhand knowledge, okay? Stories that people tell. My concern is that the neighborhood was full of police cars with everybody's weapons drawn, presumably, right? But yet, the man who I just helped proceed from a walker to a cane from a hip replacement, witnesses say that his head was almost dribbled off the pavement. Now, I wasn't there, neither were you. This is a learning experience. The man had handicap tags on his car, just like a lot of those people be living in those apartments that we're selling right now. Okay? He's also an airborne veteran, so he jumped out of airplanes for a living. He have something in common. I sunk perfectly good ships. You can see the irony in that. But I have a lot of respect for the man. And I would hope all of us as a community would have a respect for him as well. And I'm not making any accusations, but what I am asking is that each of you review all the video, audio, radio transmissions, and telephone conversations that were held in Sierra TAC 200 TAC Charlie Romeo TAC 2020 00246 before you vote on this. Because I'm not saying that our guys were at fault, though his neighbor did get into a wrestling match with his neighbor, which bothers me. But that's a different thing, and we're working on that, getting together, standing behind each other, right? But I think the intergovernmental agreement with the county might enlighten us to what we're actually dealing with. And being as which this happened in April, the last quarter of the fiscal year, and we're almost a quarter into a fiscal year. I think the county can handle being put off for a couple weeks until we come with that agreement, because nothing's been going on except if you're going to Walmart or Lowe's. There really hasn't been a lot of problems relative to the big picture of things as we see them normally. So there's an anomaly here that provides us with the opportunity to do that. And I really, really would appreciate that if you could review that before you vote on this. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Thank you, Mr. DiCarlo. Well, now, is there any questions from Mrs. Yarborough? Any further discussion on the court agreement?
I did have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you remind us of when the 6 months is over?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Calhoun, yes, it ends on December 31st, 2020.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? 5-4, I gotta learn how to count tonight too, not only remember names. 6-4, 1 against. Motion carries. Thank you. Comments and requests of council is the next item. We'll start tonight with Ms. Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, per usual, have nothing.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Mrs. Pacheco.
Nothing for me tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Pacheco. Ms. Humphrey.
I actually have nothing.
Yeah, I had everything I was gonna say.
The
was
rest of
gonna
us,
be
we don't have to
used.
take up their time, okay? Mr. Benning.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanna, I don't have much. I just wanna thank a couple people for inviting me to their wedding this weekend, Labor Day weekend. Great weekend, great wedding, great reception. So just congratulations to Jordan and Leslie. And wish them a long, healthy marriage. Other than that, it's been a good month, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Benning. Mrs. Calhoun?
Well, let me think of something to say. I have nothing.
Thank you, Mrs. Calhoun. Mayor Pro Tem Gray?
I have nothing, sir.
Well, I'm gonna break the streak, I guess. I just wanna remind everybody that, tomorrow is 9/11, so we need to take a minute to pause and think of those folks that died on that day and sacrificed since then, for our national security. It's also, I think, we got, September 17th coming up, which is Constitution Day, so that's another important day to remember and reflect on the rights we have in the Constitution, and why that's important to our society, especially with all the political animus that's going on with the presidential campaigns. So I would just recommend that to you. I have nothing additional to add, so seeing nothing else before the council,